Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we turn to talking about the latest and greatest game coming from PlayStation 4 called Ghosts of Tsushima. This game has been making waves all over the place this last few weeks because frankly it looks like a pretty awesome game that has some really cool mechanics, awesome graphics, and a really interesting story as well. Basically, for those who don't know, Ghosts of Tsushima came out around a week ago and it's an exclusive for the PlayStation 4 that features some ancient gameplay set in olden time in Japan. It's set on an island in Japan and it's set in the medieval times. You swing around a sword and fight bad guys and do some kinds of stealth stuff and stuff like that. It looks like a lot of fun. It's very cool. Looks like it's really well done too. Everyone's really accepting the game in the public. Lots of people are playing it here on YouTube and lots of people are talking about it too. And perhaps that's what has become a problem now because we all know that once something gets popular, it's really inevitably going to get criticized by SJWs. Today is no different. Today we're talking about how some social justice warriors are going after the game and talking about how the game is supposedly racist, offensive. They're going to critique the game's soundtrack and everything. And basically, it goes back to it being set in ancient Japan and the fact that basically, I think the game was made by some white people and they're kind of offended that we're making a game set in Japan, this and that. You know how the story goes. We're not allowed to kind of culturally appropriate. Lots of stuff dealing with that, dealing with imperialism, dealing with history. Like history is just something that's offensive in the present. I know it sounds weird, but history is something that just triggers a lot of people now. Like you can't go back in time and especially you can't portray stuff that's in the past. That's why things have been taken down. For example, a lot of things relating to ancient or olden American history, like things related to the Civil War, a lot of those things have been going down recently too. And now this game has come up. And I think another reason too worth pointing out is SJWs these days get mad if games and properties don't pander to them, and this game seems to not. It seems to be totally devoid of any kind of like politics or social justice warrior influences. There's no liberal pushes in here as far as I've seen. It's just good old-fashioned gameplay, a cool story, and all that other stuff we talked about. So that's probably what's triggered them, especially considering this is the next big release that came after The Last of Us Part 2. That was the previous big PlayStation title that came out about a month ago. And of course, we talked about that extensively because that's all they did in that game was pander to leftists and SJWs. They made the whole thing woke. They added alphabet characters. They killed the main male character, and all that stuff happened. So to see a game come out next to not even do that at all, I'm sure a lot of leftists are triggered and very, very upset. That's why they're attacking this game, because it's not only popular, but it's not pandering to them. So with that said, I want to check out this article next. It's from Paste. It says, 3 samurai game soundtracks to bump instead of playing Ghosts of Tsushima. Now, this is obviously trying to get people away from that game, trying to like turn them away because they don't like Ghosts. And as you'll see, that's a bit of an understatement. You're going to see some really, really crazy accusations in this article. So let's go ahead and read into it. Sucker Punch's big samurai game of the year is finally out, and I couldn't care less about whether it's dope or not. A big open world game with a hokey, arguably racist approach to samurai aesthetic. A game that sure sounds like it's all too willing to fall in with imperialistic logic in pursuit of expensive AAA Orientalist spectacle. At best, Ghosts of Tsushima sounds boring. Okay, right out the gate. I mean, that is quite the intro right there. I think we got to break it down beat by beat because the guy is obviously going into the game trying not to like it. Like he doesn't want it to be good for some reason, like probably the reasons we were talking about before. But before we get to that, let's talk about the accusations. He calls it hokey and arguably racist approach to samurai aesthetic. So this is the part we're talking about. Like in the intro, we're talking about sorts of cultural appropriation. Like you can't portray samurai, especially if you're in this day and age and if you're not like straight up a samurai from Japan. Like you can't portray things that are outside your race nowadays. I don't think that's a good thing. I think people should be able to make games and movies and stories about whatever they want. And sure, possibly things could get offensive, like if you use some wrong stereotypes or you make a certain group look like they're really terrible when they're not. I mean, that could certainly happen. But even then, I mean, depending on the story, like it could be there to serve the narrative. Like sometimes you need to villainize a group to make your story better, or sometimes you have to exaggerate some features to portray it right on camera. But yeah, certainly there's small instances where it could be offensive, but we're way past that now in the present. In the present, we're talking about just complaining about everything. And they're just saying it's arguably racist. Like, that's just kind of like a weasel word. Like, oh, I want to make it racist. I'm trying to push against this game. And that's the real story here. They're really just trying to tear down this game in any way they can. And since they don't have good reasons, like, they're just sounding really desperate. Next, it talks about pro-imperialism, like falling in line with the imperialist logic, which is certainly a interesting take. It goes back to the whole idea they hate colonialism and imperialism and the way these countries used to expand hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And yeah, I'm sure there's good arguments for that. Like, I'm not saying everything they did was right back then. There was a lot of bad things. Imperialists were conquering armies in a lot of cases. People got hurt. There was offensive things said and done. I'm sure the same things kind of happened with colonialism, but really, it's not fair to judge it with modern eyes. Like, it's really just not understanding the history. Like, things were different back then. People were just at war all the time. Like, things weren't all as civilized and as, we're all so domesticated now and used to all this peace and love and happiness. But the world really wasn't like that. Even just going back like 50 or 100 years ago, like, we're very, very sheltered and spoiled now. And you have to really point that out before you go and attack things that happened in the past. Like, they always want to do with American colonialism, British colonialism, like all the European countries that colonized and created empires and stuff like that. And the same thing's going along with them attacking Japan, who certainly had some flaws. And there were some bad points in the Japanese history, particularly when they sided with Germany during World War II. But this game is far, far before that. This is set like hundreds of years ago. So it really isn't related, but I can see where they're going with this. Like, they're trying to compare that. But again, it's just a historical story, and it's something also being done for fun. I'm sure there's nothing offensive, and I'm sure it's not boring either, as this article says. I think it's just them having this leftist take that they just can't stand. This is to be expected, I guess. Sucker Punch is the studio that cast its 3 natives in Second Son with white actors, invented a fake native tribe while stealing directly from the Duwamish, and decided that a rogue government agent was the real baddie, not the status quo settler colonialism infecting Seattle and the rest of America. Okay, wow. So this is them attacking the previous games from this developer. Sucker Punch is the company who made Ghost of Tsushima and also this infamous series. Second Son is one of the infamous sequels. And apparently they're going back in time again. Now, you got to remember, these games were made many years ago. I mean, this isn't as old. This is like 5 years ago, maybe, or even 10 is when the infamous series started. I'm not sure when Second Son came out. Let me double check. So Second Son is a game that came out 6 years ago in 2014. And I think it's safe to say that, yeah, that was a different time. Like, you could go back just 3 or 4, 5 years. Like, anything pre-2016 didn't have all these offensive implications to it. Like, actors could play other roles that weren't their necessary identity or skin color or race or gender or whatever it may be. Like, if you could do the voice, you could play the part. And that's the point that most people would recognize. Like, it's really silly, but this guy just says it like, oh, it's just matter of fact. Like, if you use white actors to voice a minority, that's bad. But we all know that's only a really anti-white argument. Like, they never complain when other minorities voice a white character or they voice other minorities themselves. Like, a black person can voice a brown character and vice versa, but it's only an issue when whites voice other characters, and that's because this is an anti-white argument. And then next we talk about them inventing a tribe, which is just something you do in a story. A video game is a story. A lot of these things are like movies or watching a season of a TV show. So I really don't see any issues here. And then the fact that they want to say, oh, America, they want to make America the bad guy in the game, like settler colonialism infecting Seattle and America. So here we're already getting to what I compared it to. Like, I'm just so spot on today. Gosh, guys, I need to pat myself on the back more because I was referencing colonialism. That's why they don't like imperialism. And again, like I was saying, there's certainly bad things. I'm not like a big imperialist colonialist, but I recognize the history of it and also just the value of it too. I mean, if we didn't have colonialism, we wouldn't have America. We wouldn't have Australia and Canada and South Africa and New Zealand. Like, there's a lot of great products of colonialism. It's not all as bad as they say. There were certainly negative aspects, but like I said, things were very, very conflicting in the past. It was about wars, and it was about battling and taking land and beating it from other people. And nowadays we don't do that anymore. Like, everything's pretty much settled and agreed upon, besides a few border disputes here and there. But that's just, we can't look back on those times with our modern eyes. It's just not fair. Remember how the good ending achievement was actually called reconciliation? Yeah. How in the bad ending, you go home and obliterate your tribe? That awarded rebellion. Remember how director of Second Son and Ghost of Tsushima, Nate Fox, straight up said he never visited the Dawamish Cultural Center, which is just a 20-minute drive from the studio, but a 5,200-mile trip to Japan was doable? How the reason the protagonist was native is because Seattle has natives, none of whom are apparently actors. You probably don't remember any of that because certainly none of the reviewers and critics at the time commented on it. Well, that's because, like I said, back in 2014, SJW culture was just kind of coming up on a rise. PC culture had been started far before that. Like 2010 is when things started to happen, but there were still like outliers and they weren't dominating everything. So by 2014, that's when BLM started. And then 2015 was when people started running for elections. That's when Trump became a candidate. And that's when leftists just started to go completely crazy. 2016, I mean, forget about it. But the point is, people didn't comment and talk about this back in the day because it wasn't an issue back in the day. And it really shouldn't be an issue now. Like, this is just like a really, really woke reporter at this Paste magazine website. And it's like this classic trend for gaming journalists. Like, these gaming journalists, they're just really, really woke now. They want to complain about race and gender. Like, none of this has to do with the game, by the way. Like, yeah, there's some parts of the story that can complain about portrayals, but what about the swordplay? What about the stealth? What about the load times? Like, there's actual things to talk about that are way more important than this as far as a video game is concerned. And yeah, I really think it just goes back to the intro. Like I said, they're complaining about something that's popular. They're mad it didn't pander to them, and they want to go after this studio who has shown they're not really catering to woke people before. They make more interesting stories and cool like ideas, like these tribes, like this stuff set in ancient Japan. And I really like it. Like, honestly, I see all this stuff in this article and it makes me want to play the game more. Like, I want to play this. I want to get Ghost of Tsushima. I want to get these old infamous games. So if you guys are interested, if you guys think that's a good idea, make sure you comment your thoughts below and also hit the like button. Let's try to get a record-setting likes issue here. Like, for example, let's say if I get 3,000 likes, I'll go ahead and buy the Ghost of Tsushima game and give it a shot. I'll show you guys some gameplay. We could talk about it more, talk about how it's not offensive. Certainly, I've not heard anyone legitimately make these arguments. Like, all I've seen from the people that actually game, they love the game. People are supporting it on our side. Like, it looks cool, it's fun, and only the SJWs are the real haters. So again, thanks for watching today's video. That about wraps things up. Comment your thoughts below. Hit the like button. If we get to 3,000 likes, I'll play Ghost of Tsushima and give you guys another video about it. And thanks again for your time. Have a great day. I appreciate you guys watching. Have a good one.